We live?
It's loading. Elliot, you can go ahead and turn your video on. All right, y'all should be good to go.
All righty. Good afternoon, Facebook. Danae Madison here, Junior Outreach Specialist with RPOP. And today we are going to conduct a live interview with the Current Voices of Russell Project. And we have special guest, Elliot Kelly Jr. To get started, we're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves. So I'm going to let Madison go first.
Hey, I'm Madison. I'm a Junior Outreach Specialist at RPOP.
A little bit more about yourself, Madison.
That's all I really have to say.
What university you study at?
Oh, so I'm currently a transfer student at JCTC. I have one more semester, then I'll be transferring to U of L to get my major in psychology.
What's up? I am also in college right now. I'm a senior at U of L, a Pan-African Studies major. I think that's all I got to. I don't got much about myself either. We have Elliot Kelly Jr. with us. Elliot, if you want to go and tell the audience about yourself.
What's going on? How y'all doing? So, as it's already been stated, my name is Elliot Kelly Jr. I'm also from Louisville, Kentucky. I attend the University of Louisville. I'm a senior, majoring in economics with a minor in Pan-African Studies. After graduation, I plan on going to graduate school to study Pan-African Studies and then get a PhD in psychology. And yeah, that's
that it.
Yeah, I think that's it.
That's dope, Elliot. We appreciate you being here with us today.
Sure, and I appreciate you all for having me.
So we're going to tell you all a little bit about the project. It's called the Current Voices of Russell Project. And our main goal is to gauge the perspectives of Russell youth and to amplify those voices. And we are we're going to ask them interview questions about Black wealth, about community development, communication methods, as well as ways in which RPOP can engage with the youth and partner with them in any way. So again, a part of the process, we're going to conduct an interview campaign. We're looking to interview about 15 Russell youth. And then we're also going to conduct a social media campaign after the interview process, in which we, share those interviews on social media, as well as with the interviewees' headshots and their bios, just to show appreciation for them helping us out with this. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the interview. Madison, you want to kick that off?
I sure can. So, like I said, hello, Elliot. It's nice having you here. Let me get my document up really quick. Okay. So the first few questions are going to center around Black wealth. So what does...
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. We got to get the interviewee info first. If he's...
Oh, you're right. Completely forgot. So can you state your age for me, please?
I'm 21 years old.
Okay. And your relation to Russell?
I grew up in the western of Louisville, and I attended Central High School.
Okay, great.
Lastly, your gender identity, if you don't mind stating on the live.
Yeah, I identify as a male. My preferred pronoun uses are he, him, and his.
Thank you. All right, Madison, take it away.
So yes, the first couple of questions are going to center around Black wealth. And so what does Black wealth mean to you?
To me, Black wealth means, well, wealth in general, but specifically Black wealth, it means more than just money. It's also about ownership and assets and equity. So it includes more than just having a good job and having a lot of money, but it also includes ownership and ownership such as home ownership, land ownership, ownership of assets that have the potential to make you money. For example, businesses and stocks and investments. It's a combination of it's such a broad thing, and there's so many different. It reaches so many different areas, and it's so broad. But I guess to a concise definition is just. It's basically the total of all the assets that you own, anything that has the potential to add value to who you are. So everything that you own pretty much is what your Black wealth is. That's what Black wealth is. It's more than just money. It's more than just a salary. It's about ownership. It's all about assets and equity.
Great answer.
So, are you hopeful for your financial future in the current economy of America?
Me personally, I'm definitely hopeful because my financial future, in terms of just making money, the way if you can add value to people, then people will be willing to invest in you. And that's just how I look at life. And me, I see myself as somebody that's able to add value, and I see myself as individually unique in terms of what I offer currently, and then what I provide to offer after I finish my schooling and what I specialize in. So I'm very optimistic about my financial future. Um, yeah, especially with the current state with the current state of the economy, it just me personally, I plan on owning my own business. I don't plan on working for anybody. I plan on having something working with people, but not for people. And this current economy just goes to show you that no matter how good you are at your job, uh, no matter how great you think you are, no matter how much of the asset you think you are, if you work for someone and it benefits them not to have you, then you're liable to be gone at any given moment. And there's no telling what can cause that. In the current economy or in the current circumstances, um, it was a health pandemic that caused a lot of people to lose jobs, regardless of how good they were, how long they've been there, how secure they thought they were. The fact that there's someone above them, a lot of people are able to lose jobs. But me personally, because I plan on working for myself, I'm very comfortable in my financial future because I'm the one that's always going to be in control.
Okay. Well, you kind of answered my next question, but what do you think your chances are of becoming a billionaire?
My chances of becoming a billionaire, me personally, I really don't think too much about that, if I'm being honest with you. And the reason is, I just don't see myself needing $1 billion to do anything in this world. So, yeah, I just don't see myself needing $1 billion for anything. So, my plan for my life is to, of course, you need money as a means to an end, but money is never my end result. So, my goal is never how much money do I plan on making. How much can I make? It's just about having enough to do what I plan on doing it right now. And right now, I see myself making easily six figures, maybe being a millionaire. But billionaire, I really don't aspire to do that because when you look at billionaires, there's always a group that you're oppressing. And as a person of color, as Russell placed the problem as being placed in a marginalized community, being placed in a Black community, a group that's been oppressed throughout the course of history, not only this nation but the history of this world. It's important to when you think about wealth, it's also important to realize that um, my individual wealth is not community wealth. You know what I'm saying? So even though we can have billions circulating through my community without me being a billionaire, I don't want to be the sole owner of that billion because to make that much money or to have that level of financial capital, there has to be people working underneath you that are underpaid, that are overworked, that are being severely under just oppressed in many different ways for one person to
Mhm.
be able to for one person to be able to generate that much capital for themselves. I wouldn't even say that they generate it, but to have that much capital generated in their name or for that person to be a billionaire, there has to be people that you're stepping on, or people that you have to people that are being taken advantage of to be able to get there. And my goal is to never take advantage of anybody. So my aspirations are to be a billionaire. My aspirations are to be financially affluent or to be well enough to do what I want to do. And that's going to change over time. But my
Elliot,
aspirations are not to be a billionaire.
that was a great answer. I love that. I actually want to add something to that. So, do you feel as if wealth hoarding is unethical?
I do. I do feel like it's unethical just because it would be difficult to even spend $1 million in the course of a lifetime. That's something that'll be extremely hard to do for one person to spend
Mhm.
that much money in the course of a lifetime. You have to intentionally make an effort to spend that much money, and even then, you still might not be able to do it. So, what's the point in having that much money for yourself? If I ever generate that much money, um, of course, like time may change how I feel, but where I'm at right now and just my moral code, if I'm ever to generate that much money, the goal is at least half of that, if not more, will be given back into my community because like I said, there's no need for that much money. I feel like that's unethical because there are people that need it much more. What's the point of having $1 billion if there are people who aren't even making 20,000 a year? What's the point of having a 10 bedroom, 15 bedroom, 10 bathroom house? There are people that are homeless. So I do feel like it's unethical just for reasons like that. I feel like of course, the way the capitalist structure is built in this country is you get what you work for. But in a lot of ways, the people that work the hardest, the people that work the longest hours and the most grueling jobs don't get compensated for it the same way that the people at the top do. So there's I wouldn't say that it's necessarily, I would say it's unethical because it's selfish in nature to hoard that much money.
Mm-hmm. You know, I love how you answer that question because the reason we incorporated it was to gauge, you know, where the youth is in our capitalistic society, like where their mindset is and how realistic they think it is to, you know, garner that amount of money. And it's honestly, chances are like, you know, less than 1%, you know what I mean? So yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I agree completely.
It's a great
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And do you know of any resources that can help you learn personal finances?
Any resources that can help me learn personal finances? I mean, that's what I study in school, but me being an economics major, but outside of school, honestly, not really. When you say resources, like it's, of course there are financial advisors and there are ways that you can have people help you with that, but those cost money, and that's what a lot of people in marginalized communities don't have, is just excess money flowing to where they can afford resources or afford quote unquote professional resources or the top tier resources. So when it comes to resources that are targeted towards underserved, marginalized communities, I really can't think of too many financial resources. And that's really why I decided to study economics. That's something I plan on doing with my life. I plan on doing a lot. But one thing I plan on doing is being able to pass on a lot of that knowledge about economics, about ownership of different assets, investments, about loans, about even just something as small as creating a budget and how to do that. Those are lessons that I plan on. Those are lessons that I plan on giving to my community. So I can't think of any resources right now, but I definitely plan on providing resources in the future in whatever form that takes. But I definitely plan on doing something where to the people is low expense and no expense. The Louisville Urban League, I believe, has resources that I know they do free taxes at the Louisville Urban League, and I know they have other financial resources, but I can't say exactly what they are off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Do you know anything that pertains to home ownership?
I mean, it just depends on like where you, in what capacity. Just like how to purchase a home or
Anything
uh,
about that timeline at all? How to purchase it? How getting in contact with anybody about purchasing a home? How to build that home? Anything of the sort?
I'm not an expert on it, but I'm not an expert on it at all, anything like that. So I don't want to I just don't want to give out information from. I don't want to give out too much information just because I'm not an expert on the topic. But that's something it's something that I've been looking into for myself. And I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I wouldn't say that I'm very knowledgeable, but there are definitely some things that I've learned. For example, things like renting a home versus owning a home. A lot of times, renting a home will be more costly over time. Uh, when it comes to like owning a home, it's beneficial because it adds to your net worth. And that's like when I go back to just the first question, like what is Black wealth? That ownership. Like for example, even owning a home is something that has the potential to make you money. For example, even if you don't even say you have a home and there's another home that you could purchase, that home could be rented out. That's a potential source of additional revenue that you don't have to put full-time hours into. Say you were to make that home available on Airbnb, which is basically it's a third party where you can list your home and people be able to rent your home for the weekend, and that's a great source of revenue. So things of that nature. Home ownership really has the potential to make you has the potential to make, when it comes to like buying, when it comes to purchasing a home, when it comes to like the process of purchasing a home, the most traditional route is to contact the realtor. And me personally, I've been looking into what's called an FHA loan. And basically what that loan is, whatever the value of that home is or whatever you're projected to pay, you put down 3.5% of what that is. And you put down 3.5% and the loan will cover the rest of it. So for example, say you want to purchase a home that's $100,000 or it's valued at $100,000, 3.5% will be $3,500 that you have to put down, and the loan will cover the rest. And the loans, and you can the terms of the loan differ from person to person, but yeah, I would say when it comes to like the process of purchasing a home, I'm not super knowledgeable, but I can say that it has the potential to make you a lot. It has the potential to be an additional source of revenue, and it has the potential to be able to add to your net worth and just how much money you have coming in as well. So when it comes to like once again like that black wealth question, that's a part of your black wealth, because even though you're not putting full-time hours into that home ownership process, you're not putting full-time hours into the maintenance of the home, it still has the potential to make you money depending on the use of that home, depending on how you plan to use that home. Do you plan on living in it? Do you plan on renting it out? Do you plan on placing it on a host app like Airbnb? There's so many different ways that you can there's so many different ways that you could use that home to provide revenue for yourself. Even if you purchase that home, you increase the property value and resell the home. That's a way to increase revenue. A lot of people, they flip houses for a living. So it's that constant process of buying a home for a low cost, increasing the property value, and then selling that home.
Yeah.
And then ownership is also.
I'm sorry, continue.
I was gonna say ownership is also good, because when you look at different things like gentrification, which is the rapid increase. When you look at the rapid increase in property value, you look at what was formerly, it's called Nulu now, but formerly known as Clarksdale Projects. When you look at what happened in Clarksdale, it was that exact thing where a lot of people in Clarksdale they didn't own their unit. They rented their unit. They leased their unit out. So basically as the property value rose, the person that owned that property, they were able to raise prices based on the addition of new businesses, based on the revitalization. But in all reality, it was a displacement of the current residents, because they didn't have the ownership in that land to be able to say they didn't have the ownership of that land to be able to decide what prices they were going to pay, to be able to decide things like that. They were given a price, and that price can change at any given moment. So like when you take things like gentrification into account, home ownership just gives you more control in situations like that. Home ownership gives you more it gives you more ownership, not over just that home, but your community as well, just considering things like that.
Yeah, I like where you went with that. Because our intention with that question, when you think of home ownership, of course, you think of that process of building that home, but you also think of wealth building, because it's probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest ways to build wealth is, becoming a homeowner. And I heard you mention the FHA, is that Federal Housing Authority?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also, plays into the history of racism when it comes to home ownership. You got the Federal Housing Authority, who has a, long history of, playing in that racism. You think of redlining and different stuff like that. So
even throughout the history of our city, Shively, which is at once, it was an affluent suburbs, a predominantly white neighborhood here in Louisville, like pretty much an all white neighborhood here in Louisville in the 1950s, 1960s, in that era. So Ann and Carl Braden, they were a couple, and they would purchase homes for Black people in their name, so that way Black people could live in those homes. So so when you take things like that into account, the fact that like a lot of times home ownership has been used as a way to segregate. Louisville's one of the most segregated cities in the nation, and a lot of that has to do with the concept of home ownership. Like you mentioned redlining. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's what home ownership plays into that, because basically, like, the way redlining was done was basically property values were assessed to different neighborhoods, and basically neighborhoods were given A through D grades, and it was based on different things like property value, crime rates. But a big part of that, what was also on there was African American population. And when you look at the correlation, the highest percentage of African Americans were always considered the C class and D class neighborhoods, whereas the A's and B's were the lowest African American populations. So the goal of that redlining, or the goal of that map, was to basically maintain that status quo. So I'm glad you mentioned that redlining piece, because that's huge. That's huge when it comes to home ownership and wealth building. It was a way to basically maintain the wealth. It was a way to maintain wealth disparities and keep them where they are, and to keep the affluent class comfortable, and keep the underclass in the same status that they were in. And in reality, it's widening the gaps between the two, and it's increased that wealth disparity. between different communities. And then and yeah, even when you look at just like the amount of money versus the amount of ownership, um when you look at like the amount of, so for example, for every dollar a white person makes, I can't remember the exact percentages, but black people make and own less, but the percentage they make more compared to the white dollar than they own compared to the white dollar, and it's a huge disparity.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the last question for me would be, what do you know about the businesses in the Russell neighborhood and their engagement with Russell?
I would say the businesses, and does that include nonprofits as well,
Mhm.
or just for-profit businesses?
Actually, no, we're gonna do for profit.
Okay, okay. Um, I can't say I know all the businesses, but what I can say is that there are definitely a lot of black faces in the community. For example, Lucretia's Kitchen and Sweet Peaches, which are restaurants. You take the Urban League is a nonprofit, but they do a lot of great work in the community. I can't really say too much to it. What I can say is that the Russell neighborhood, I mean, historically speaking, the Russell neighborhood has had a lot of black commerce, a lot of black businesses, and that's, I thought, was very beneficial for the neighborhood. But just throughout the passage of time, that percentages went down in black business ownership in the community. But I can't really say too much in terms of yeah, I really can't say too much. I feel like I don't know enough to be able to answer that question well. I feel like I just don't know every business well enough to be able to fully answer that question. But what I can say is that particularly in the Russell neighborhood, there are a lot of black faces, and there are a lot of black businesses compared to other communities in Louisville.
Yeah, I agree. There are definitely some, plenty of black businesses that are thriving, and they do what they can to give back to the community and help in ways they can. But there's also, some, I don't want to say white businesses, but there's white businesses that don't engage with the community as they should. So I think our vision with that question was to hint at that, and also to ask, what do you think, like, do you think those businesses, those white businesses specifically, do you think they have a duty to the community? Should they be engaging with the community? Because I think there's definitely some businesses who, who we can mark who don't engage, even though they're right in the center of the community.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I would definitely say they have a duty. But the question is, do they acknowledge their duty?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the real question. When you look at the goal of a business, the goal of a business is to maximize the wealth of its owners or shareholders, which are like the owners of the business. The goal isn't to necessarily just benefit the community. So I would say they have a more in terms of what a business is as an inception, they don't have a duty because they provide a service, you get money. But really speaking, they definitely have a duty. They definitely have a duty. And I think like you said, there are thriving black businesses that give back where they can. And I've definitely seen that. Me being a student in Central and me living in the West End, I've definitely seen that different community events that they contribute to and things of that nature, different ways that they try to benefit different causes. But like you said, a lot of these businesses that are white owned, the goal is just more so to make money. And that's like the sole goal, to make money for those who work there and for those who own their business. And I definitely say they have a duty to community, and the duty to the community is basically to add value to not just because a lot of times the argument is made for a lot of businesses is it brings money into the community or like they generate revenue, but the question is revenue for who?
Right.
And I think that's a question that doesn't get answered all the time is who does that revenue go to? And it goes to the owners. And a lot of times the owners of these businesses that aren't owned by those that are residents, the money doesn't go to the residents. The money doesn't flow back into the community, so that the same money that they're making is being given to different communities throughout the city. And I think that's where the duty comes in, is making sure that if you're gonna strategically place your business in this location, because it's a benefit to you, then you need to be a benefit to these residents of the community, not just by the services you provide, but also by the goodwill of your business. Like what can you provide these residents with the money that they're providing you? And I think that's a question that there's definitely, I mean, to answer your question, there's a duty, there's an obligation for that. But a lot of times, these businesses that are predominantly white owned, because they don't relate to the residents, or because they can identify with the residents, they aren't able to see that duty because they have a different perspective.
Okay. All right. We about halfway done with the questions. So this next set, let me look. This next set will gauge the interest in architecture and community development. So the first question, if you had a magic wand, what's one thing you would add to, take away from, or change about the Russell neighborhood?
Add to, take away from, or change.
Mm-hmm. That was a good one, ain't it?
Yeah, that is a good question. I say it's a difficult question because there's a lot of things that I mean, there are a lot of things that I would change, but one thing that I would I think that's a difficult question. That is a difficult question.
If you need
If I
to,
could
we can
change-
always come back to a question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, can we come back to that one? I definitely need some time to think about that one because I feel like if I answer that now, there's definitely something I'm gonna miss out on. So can we come back to that question, please?
Definitely. All right, the next one is, can you name, let me hold on. Let me word it weird. Can you name anything that Russell has that other neighborhoods don't have, or vice versa?
I would say identity.
You said identity?
That's one thing. I mean, that's definitely one thing I say is the Russell neighborhood has identity. It has I would say it's extremely lively. Just walking through the community, you see a lot of people outside, you see a lot of people fellowship, and you see a lot of people. There's a lot more, even though there's this perception of like from the outside, there's a perception of poverty and crime and just a lot of things that you would associate with like darker things. But when you're an inhabitant of that community, like you live in that community, you're amongst the residents for an extended period of time, what you see is love, what you see is family, what you see is unity and cooperation and just a mutual understanding of each other. That's not something that I would say is 100% consistent everywhere because there's inconsistencies everywhere. But at the same time, I would definitely say that's something that the Russell neighborhood has a lot of neighborhoods don't, is that rich history and identity in the city of Louisville as a Black community, that rich, vibrant history, and even to this day, just a very lively community. Even though, like you said, there's like an undertone of white businesses and white ownership and control, city hands on the neighborhood at times. I would definitely say the neighborhood has definitely been able to maintain that identity as like a safe haven for Black people. Me personally, I feel more comfortable walking through the Russell neighborhood at any given hour than I would anywhere else. I walking in the West, anywhere in the West, than I would anywhere else in the city as a Black person.
Yeah, I say that all the time too.
Yeah, because it's like at the end of the day, regardless of the perception, I know I'm amongst my people, and I know for a fact there's a conversation I can have with literally anybody.
Right.
And people are willing to engage and talk, which isn't present everywhere else in the city. So it's one thing I would say. It's a very community focused identity by the residents.
I love that. All right, last question, this section. What do you think of the abandoned structures in Russell? So this is abandoned businesses, abandoned residential buildings.
Me personally, I see a lot of that. It's not the fault of the community or the residents of the community. A lot of times, it's a lack of. I feel like it's a lack of city investment. I feel like it's a lack of the fact that it's not a priority of the city. It costs us a lot of that. Just when you look at the proportionality of resources, basically like the fact that there are a lot of abandoned structures and a lot of abandoned buildings, homes, and things of that nature, that doesn't have to do with lack of responsibility of people that own those, or lack of responsibility of people who inhabit those spaces. It's more of a lack of investment, a lack of assistance from the city that other neighborhoods get, a lack of inflow of cash, and lack of priority that other neighborhoods make. So one thing I would say, it just goes to show It doesn't say any. I feel like it says more about the city than it does about the residents. Just about the priority that the city places on Black people, that the city places on predominantly Black and predominantly marginalized communities. So that's what I would say about those abandoned structures. I would just say it just goes to show the lack of investment.
You know, I agree completely. All right. We are approaching. Did you want to go back to that question? If you had a magic wand, what's one thing you would add to, take away from, or change about Russell?
One thing I would add, change, or take away. I mean, I would just add opportunity. When I say opportunity, I mean for example, earlier when you mentioned resources and things of that nature, I would just make those, because there are definitely some resources, but I would make those more widespread. And then even in addition to that, I would just change the fact that like a lot of businesses aren't willing to invest or set up in the Russell or in the West End just because of the perception of the neighborhood. So that's one thing I would change, is just the opportunity. A lot of times when you take these businesses that are, I apologize, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it went out for a second, but yeah, like when you look at the opportunities that are present and you look at the businesses that are present, a lot of times just for example, the presence of corner stores and liquor stores and things of the nature versus the presence of grocery stores. So when you take things like that into account, it's like the businesses that are placed in this community, like I said earlier, they're more focused on making money. So they're not focused on building or adding value to the community. They're focused on adding value to themselves. So it in turn is liable to be destructive to the community. Like in my neighborhood, or close to my, like there are more liquor stores and there are more corner stores than there are grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you go into the grocery stores, there's not much fresh produce available. Everything in grocery stores and everything that's present in grocery stores in the West, a lot of times is a lot of processed food versus fresh food. So
Mm-hmm.
even the grocery stores themselves, a lot of times don't really have the resources of other grocery stores in the city. So when you take things like that into account, it's just almost like there's just a lack of investment, or there's a lack of investment from people that truly have the power and the resources to make that change. You got a lot of people who got the will. You got a lot of people who have the skill. You got a lot of people who have the passion and the fire. But when it comes to people with significant resources and funding and money, a lot of those people aren't willing to invest because it serves no major benefit to them. So I would just change the level of investment and opportunity in the rest of the neighborhood. I think like that, because when you take like changing one, I don't like the concept of changing one thing, because that leaves so many other things on the table that need to be addressed. For example, violence in the community. A lot of times the violence that does happen, like I said earlier, a lot of that's perception, but the violence that does happen a lot of times is because of the underfunding and under the fact that the neighborhood is under resourced, heavily underinvested. So a lot of those stem from the fact that there's just not much investment. Like everything pretty much stems from the fact of lack of investment, or not enough investment in the neighborhood. So that's what I would definitely change.
Okay. All right, going to transition to the next set of questions. This is the last set. So these ones are going to gauge communication methods and ways in which not only you communicate with others, but others communicate with you. So I think in this section we focus on JCPS and ways in which they communicate, resources to their students. So the first one, do you use any outlets to stay updated on current events?
Do I usually current events at Russell, or just current events in general?
Current events in general, world, national.
Yeah. So on my phone I got the news app. That's it sends notifications to my phone anytime any major headline happens. Mm-hmm. So that helps a lot. Watch different news channels. And then on top of that, just my studies in school. A lot of my like the fact that I study economics and Pan-African studies, a lot of my professors, they keep us updated on those things just because they're extremely relevant to our field and they're extremely relevant to our content that we study. Mm-hmm. So for example, one of my professors last semester, she made us purchase a New York Times subscription, and we had to basically read different articles and provide updates on these articles periodically. So like basically for me, my studies kind of forced me to stay updated on what's going on in the city, in the state, in the country, and around the world. My studies. When it comes to like local and statewide, it's a lot of my economic side, but then my minor Pan African Studies plays a major role when it comes to what's happening in the world. Because when you look at systems of oppression, even in economic, there's such a link between even Pan African Studies and economics. When you look at the link between, because I keep talking about marginalized communities and oppressed people, but when you look at oppressed people, it all stems from a lot of the same things. And these trends can be seen all throughout the world. These trends can be seen in different nations. For example, what's going on in Palestine, what's going on in Lebanon. So like when you just take so basically my studies and learning about different forms of oppression and learning about intersectionality of different issues, basically, which means that how basically the link between different issues, like for example, colorism in the Black community, like we have this concept of within our community, it's a subconscious concept of light skin versus dark skin, racism, which is a lot of what is going on in the city and in the world now that we always talk about is like the big issue is racism, but in our reality, it stems from the same. I apologize. It stems from the same thing that the systems that oppress Black people are the same things that oppress women. The same things that oppress women are the same things that oppress the LGBTQ community, and these themes can be seen all throughout the world. So I'll definitely say my studies are what keeps me updated. Just learning about different theories, learning about different forms of oppression and modes of oppression. Just and really just learning about history and being able to apply it to today. That's really what keeps me updated.
Look, I'm telling y'all, I can't speak for the economics department, but the PAS department gets its students together. Do y'all hear me?
Nah, honestly, yeah. I say I learned more from Pan African Studies than I would economics just because it's more relevant to me.
Yeah.
And not only is it relevant to me, but like it teaches you about like really studying Pan African Studies. It really teaches you how to be empathetic to other people's or like other people around the world. It teaches you how to be empathetic to other groups that you may not align with or agree with. Because as you learn about the history of the indigenous peoples of America and then people in Africa and people just all throughout the world, people in the Caribbean islands and their history. We just learn about different modes of history in the world. It teaches you a lot about yourself, and as you learn about yourself, you're able to be more empathetic towards others. You're able to be more understanding, provide more mercy and grace and forgiveness. So I would definitely say, yeah, Pan African Studies and Black studies anywhere, it'll definitely get you together. It'll definitely just make you just think on an entirely different level than you would otherwise.
All right, this next question, we're gonna transition out of college. We're gonna go back to high school, okay?
All right, cool.
All right, do you feel JCPS prepared you to regulate your personal finances?
No, not at all, honestly. That's a very simple answer. Yeah, not at all, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things that I learned, I would say there were people in JC. I went to Central, so it's a predominantly Black school with a high percentage of Black staff. The principal, he's a Central grad. My coach is a Central grad. A lot of the people that I interacted with at Central, they became personal mentors of mine, and that's where I learned these things from. So I would definitely say I learned them from people in JCPS, but I would say the JCPS setup and curriculum is not what taught me at all. It's just the fact that you have people have random people within those systems that that I was personally able to build relationships with outside of that I still talk to this day. For example, my wrestling coach, Shay Founder, and Dwayne Payne. One of my mentors, he was a football coach, but he taught our men equality program, William Leach. He's still a mentor of mine to this day and still helps me with my personal finances, helped me with college decisions and life decisions. So I can definitely say I learned from people in JCPS about personal finances and just being an adult, period, and handling their responsibility. But it wasn't JCPS that taught me. It was just the fact that it was individuals who happened to be in JCPS. The curriculum and the school setup itself did not teach me. I work in schools in JCPS, and me being in elementary schools daily, I can meet elementary and middle schools and even high schools from time to time daily. what I see is a lot of pushing these standardized tests and pushing behavior and pushing obedience versus pushing the ability to think, pushing the ability to be responsible, pushing the ability to really understand these different concepts like personal finances. So like when you even when you look at math, even when you look at mathematics, certain like math is extremely important, but it doesn't help you with your finances because it doesn't teach you how to budget. It doesn't teach you the responsibility aspect of it. It just teaches you how to add, subtract, divide, and multiply at a high level, of course, but it doesn't teach you how to provide. It doesn't teach you the discipline and responsibility needed to budget. It doesn't teach you how to apply for scholarships. It's like there are random individuals that come in for that, but it's like there are a lot of students that go unserviced in that way. So I was able to, like, I was privileged in the sense that I learned from people in JCPS that just took a special interest in me, but not everybody has that privilege of just being heavily invested in by people. So
right.
I would say I would definitely say JCPS didn't teach me that, and JCPS doesn't teach the average student that.
JCPS doesn't teach a lot. You know, me personally, I was able to learn a little bit about personal finances because I took a personal finance elective. But I know I got several friends, you know what I'm saying, who didn't go that route at all and just didn't get that information at all. So it's just, they really neglect their students in that way.
Definitely. And the fact that it's seen as an elective that you really don't have to take it. This is something that you can do if you want to. And there's so many courses that are of extreme importance that are really made these life skills. Like a lot of different courses that really teach these life skills that you need as an adult. They're seen as electives versus mandatory classes. So there's less of an importance and it makes it less of a priority. So some who randomly take those electives or intentionally take them because they have somebody in their ear telling them to take them, they benefit, but the majority of students lose out. So I agree with you 100%. It's just like, I personally, like, Central has a magnet program. So my freshman year, we did a rotation where we went to each magnet. We went to each magnet program. One of those magnets was banking and personal finance. So I was able to take some stuff from that class, and that's why I was able to even plant the seed of the importance of learning about your finances. But like, if not everybody goes to Central, you know what I'm saying? So, or not even the people that go to Central, not everybody took that out like I did. So, so the fact that it's just seen with less importance in terms of curriculum in JCPS, it's really a shame that these life skills aren't really pushed.
Yeah, I agree.
Personal finances, that nature. Taxes. I learned from a random teacher how to do taxes because I asked. But if I didn't ask, she wouldn't go teach me. That's just because I had a job. And like, once again, it's because of a relationship that I had built prior. So I was privileged in that sense, but not everybody has that privilege. So I'll definitely say JCPS drops the ball for majority of their students, especially students who don't have these resources at home or don't have people who know these things at home. For example, a lot of students I work with now, they don't have families at home who understand really how to budget, how to personal finances and things of that nature. A lot of students I work with don't come from families who just have that knowledge. And how else will you attain that knowledge? How else will you attain that knowledge? If your family doesn't have it, you're not learning it in school, how else are you going to learn that knowledge?
Yeah, I agree. All right, it looks like we are at the last question. We feel like this question was a great way to wrap up our questions. So, do you believe your voice as a youth of Russell is heard, particularly on matters regarding Black wealth?
Heard to who is the real question. I would say yes, it's heard. Once again, I work with younger people, so when I'm talking to them, it's definitely heard. When I'm in a position of where I'm able to influence people, it's heard. But when it comes to decision making bodies like Metro Council and things of the nature, I definitely say I don't feel that my voice is heard.
Yeah.
And so it just really depends on heard by who. I definitely say my voice is heard, and it's heard by some people that need it, but it's only those I'm able to personally interact with in a lot of situations. So I would definitely say that it's not even just my voice; it's the voices of majority of the community that just go unheard, that go unheard.
Yeah.
So I definitely just think when it comes to saying our voice is heard by who is the next question, just because it's I think that's the important part that a lot of people don't get. Just like earlier, when it comes to like generating the wealth of, when it comes to like a business or a company or a project generating revenue for who, I think that follow-up question is extremely important. Just for who or by who, because if the residents aren't at the center of that, or if the greater good of the residents is at the center of that, then a lot of that noise goes in vain. For example, I do a lot of talking, a lot of teaching, but a lot of times it goes in vain because it's only the select individuals who I happen to interact with.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely say it's not heard by the masses. I definitely say it's not heard by decision-making bodies. So I would definitely say that it's heard, but it's heard to a small degree. But I definitely feel like not only just my voice, but the voices of majority of our communities, but majority of our community needs to be heard at a much higher rate by decision-making bodies, by people that plan on making decisions. And a lot of the times the decisions that are made in our neighborhoods aren't made by people in our neighborhoods. So at that point, nothing I say on the outside or on this Zoom call, on this Facebook Live, nothing I say is going to change that decision-making body from making a decision. So like, how can we make sure that they're hearing these voices and actually considering these voices in their decision-making processes? And I think that's the real question. So when it comes to being heard, yeah, they're heard at times, but heard in a significant way. I would say no. Is it possible? Yes, but at this current moment, I say no.
Yeah. Yeah. And
but a
that's
lot of work can be done in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Like, like we said, that's our main goal for this project is to amplify those voices in a way that we can. But like you said, if you don't have that seat at the table, I mean, your voice is heard to who? It's heard to an extent. So, yeah. And, if you think about it, if you go back to the JCPS question, if these voices were heard, there would be these classes in these schools, you know what I mean? If these youth voices were heard. So it's just, we have a lot of work to do as a society, as a community. It's a lot of work to be done. And it starts, I don't know where it starts. I think it's like a collective effort from the community, from people higher up. So, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. But yeah, I definitely agree. I think I think a good way to look at it is just like with that concept in particular, because you hit that right on the head. I'm glad you said that. Just about it takes a collaborative effort. I think a lot of times it seems like, for example, like decisions being made for a community without the residents' voices being heard in a predominant way. A lot of times it seems like somebody just shouting from the top, telling people at the bottom what to do, or making decisions for the people at the bottom. But in our reality, what needs to be done is the people at the top come down and walk with those people. And I think a lot of times that's what doesn't happen. It's almost like in society, like just really as Americans, really, like we're very selfish. You know what I'm saying? Especially when it comes to decision-making bodies, they're very selfish in nature. They're more about protecting their own interests than they are about protecting the interests of those who they serve. In a lot of instances, and I think the city of Louisville is a perfect example of that, particularly with the West End and the Russell neighborhood. It's like a lot of times the decisions are made for these communities, and comments and quotes are said about these communities, and there's a perception that's everybody's perception, everybody's decision, but those of the community. And I think until those voices are included, until the people making these decisions actually spend significant time in the communities talking to not just talking about crime, not just talking about the poverty, not just talking about poverty rates, not just talking about the abandoned buildings, but just talking to the everyday resident until on a consistent, regular basis. And relationships are built in that way. Until that happens, then I feel like it's gonna continue to be that same trend.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's all about understanding, and a lot of times the lack of understanding is just the lack of true intentional effort in seeking that understanding.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's why I really commemorate, our POP outreach team, because they're actually doing that, going out here every day, speaking with the residents one-on-one, social distancing, of course, but, they're putting that work in to, build those relationships and partner with the community instead of, helping, because that's what I feel like a lot of people in positions, feel like they're doing, like this savior complex instead of, working with those people and, helping them or partnering with them to lift them up. So
100% right.
Yeah. That's all the questions we got. So I think we about done. Madison, do you have anything to add or?
No, it went really well. That was really nice. I enjoyed that thoroughly.
Yeah, it was a really good discussion. Elliot, we really appreciate you for hopping on with us today and participating.
Yeah, and I appreciate y'all for having me.
All right, Facebook. Our project is ongoing. So if you all have any questions or comments, or you know anybody who might want to participate and get interviewed, please leave comments in the comment section. We will get back to you as soon as we can. That's all we got for y'all.
All right, have a good one, y'all.
All right, bye, y'all.